Welcome to the it's a second video, but yeah. So this is a three-part video, and here we'll be talking about the XML external entity injection. It's a web vulnerability, and we'll be talking about how attacker exploit that vulnerability. But first, in the first part video, we'll understand what is XML, what is XML entities, uh, how we use those entities in the XML, and then the second part video will be talking about all the parsers which has the issues, and maybe I'll share some lab exercises, though they are good ones already will in ports figure, but yeah, I will share my some exercises which are vulnerable, and then you can exploit them. And third video will be talking about prevention, how we can prevent it. So first of all, the XSE XML external entity web vulnerability. In 2017, it was at number 5 at the OSWAP top 10 web vulnerability. But now now it's also at number 5. It just I'm not sure it wasn't in top 10 for sure in 2017. Now it's at top. It's also under top 10, but they have put this under the another label name. Earlier it was under the external XML external entity, but now it comes under the security misconfiguration. Okay, so first of all, let's understand XML. So obviously, when application talk to each other, they need some kind of way so that they can talk to each other. So we have XML, we have plain text, we have images is one way of talking, and then we have XML. So it's like how these machines talk to each other. So for example, here as you can see, I have some XML which says order. So it's like if a customer orders something, we are adding a product to it. So you can see the XML here is that there is a order tag, a markup language. They call XML is basically markup language. So it has tags. Every tag list start with the less than and then ends with the greater than bracket, and there is a closing tag which start with the slash order. So there's the order slash order, and then it contains product. Further, so basically we can say order is a parent, and then we can say product is a child of order. Further, product has attribute which has ID 1, and then product has child 3 child name quantity price. So this is the XML line. This is the XML. This is just simple XML. So but whenever we are talking in XML, uh, so so let's talk about DTD first. So whenever we transfer XML, right, what we need to understand is that it should follow some rules. As in, uh, now let's talk about the previous slide in which we have product, and what if I add some kind of I don't know, engine type or something like that, something which is not even related here. So that means I need some kind of set of rules, so that my XML adheres to it. As in, I don't want any unknown attribute, or I don't want any unknown child for that. So that's where and also another example that we have, because HTML4 is kind of use a DTD. So DTD is basically HTML4 also complies to some kind of document that, okay, for example, option element can go inside only select or OPT or option group and the data list. You cannot add option to maybe LI or UI. So obviously to make that rules, so whenever we are parsing our XML, we need to check whether this specific XML is following that rule or not. We kind of create a schema. I want and as per that schema, we try to validate this XML. So to do that, we have a document type definition, also known as DTD. So it defines the structure. So basically, it defines that what kind of attributes an element can have, what kind of child an element can have. Further, for example, here I have said that it can say that, okay, li can only be a child of ul. So I'm taking example of HTML. In HTML, we have a tag ul. Again, first of all, HTML5 doesn't use any DTD. HTML4 do use DTD. HTML5, I believe, the specification just in a written, and then they just decode. Earlier there was a DTD, so to check it whether it's a valid HTML or not. But still, in a lot of businesses, we do use, let's say if it's a bank website, they are transferring some kind of XML, then obviously the bank has to come up with some kind of DTD so that they can say that, okay, it's a valid XML or not. So so yeah. So okay, so now the point is, how do we use DTD? So so DTD is used by XML parsers. So obviously, something is a rule defined by us as a developer or by the stakeholder, and once the XML sent to, let's say, this is, for example, this is, we have a bank website and then we have a backend. So when front end talks to the backend, they will transfer the XML file, and obviously we must have some kind of parser there, right? Because once we have the data, let's say there is a Java application, then we need to convert that XML into some kind of Java object. But before that, maybe we validate our XML whether it's valid or not. And that to conversion to convert the XML into object, we need some kind of parser. So here comes the DTD. So the parser will use our DTD and say whether it's to first of all, it will check whether our XML is hopefully it's not violating any rules. If it is, if it says it's not valid, what we can do with the document. So let's say if you send us some kind of XML to the backend, and then that document is not valid as per our DTD, what will happen is that it could reject our document. Second, it could generate some sort of warning. Let's say some maybe transfer back you to you that okay, you cannot do this or that, whatever. Let's say if you're specifying some kind of name and you put digit, then they can just give you that okay, you cannot put um, actually you cannot validate that with the uh, that whether it's a contained digit or not, because it is not like strictly type based. But let's say if you have added an, I'd say, some kind of extra element to the XML, and then it can come back to the warning that this element is not accepted. Or they can also try to fix the document. Let's say if you're missing one element, and then they can add that element, and eventually they can process that XML. So how you initialize your DTD? So as if we talk about our first example, it has only order, product, and all that, right? To to initialize a DTD, it comes under the doc type. So there's less than bracket, and then exclamatory sign, and then we have a doc type, and then we have a root. So first of all, the second line defines exclamatory doc type order, which is define the root element of XML. Then we have third element which says then the DTD started in the square bracket. In the second line, you can see that there is a square bracket started, and then ninth line you can see square bracket ended, and in between we have a DTD. It says that okay, element type order will contain product as a child. Further, they are saying product has a type of PC data. So this is just a type that what kind of data it will contain. Either it could be PC data or it can be CD data. Um, I'm not going to talk about that, but it's just a type of data what it can contain. Further, they're saying that element type product can contain name, quality, and price. And then further, they have those whatever the types like name, quality, price can contain the CD data. So obviously, you can see that we have here what I'd say around 7 lines, 7 to 8 lines that we have used to declare our DTD. So, but what happen if it as because let's talk about HTML, right? HTML has so many rules, and obviously the DTD eventually becomes so complex. So there is a way that we can refer to the external DTD, as in you can declare your DTD starting from the square, not square bracket included, just whatever the text inside the square bracket. You can host it somewhere else, and then you can refer to it. So the doc type order will remain same, like this says that this is the root element of the XML, and then system is the keyword they use to make a call to this DTD, the external file, to include the content of that file in the specific XML. So that's how we declare external DTD declaration. So that's all the DTDs. So DT is just to define the rules of the XML, what kind of element what type of element it will have, what kind of child element it can have, and all that rules, or what kind of attribute it can have. Now there's a concept called the entity. So first of all, so this is the I'd say this is the main concept of that we the where the vulnerability is. It's I won't even say vulnerability. I would say it's more like a like uh, like I guess also the way they have the OSWAP put under the security means misconfiguration. It's more like a misconfiguration, I'd say. So general entity is where there is a where their attacker can inject some kind of a malicious payload or can fetch some information or make some kind of request, same SSRF inside your server. But we'll come to that part later. But general entity is where the issue is, general entity and parameter entity. So entity is like a variable. So it's like you define in your DTD like exclamatory entity, name of the entity, and then the value that it will contain. And then how you will use it. For example, let's say we have some kind of XML. For example, this is the XML which says product and then the name of the product and other specs. Let's say there are other 10 to 20 child elements that it contains for that product. But then there is another element which says brand. So obviously this brand is it's like a repetitive text. So what we can do is we can refer to that entity that we have declared, which says brand value is MEC, and then we can access that value with the use of ampersand with the name of entity and end with the semicolon. So the value will replaced here. So whatever the text that we have for the brand, it will be replaced here. General entity example, I will be talking about one of the example that we use as a HTML entities. So HTML entities is a concept by which we use special character in our HTML, right? So one of the example is LT. So if you want to put a less than sign, usually you use ampersand LT semicolon. So that means they have declared their entities in some other file, and you're just accessing those entities. For example, I already have some kind of or I may have showed the quiz, but you forget that part because that quiz is you'll be solving that anyways. So character. So yeah, so this is the I guess the whole list of the entities that they have declared for the HTML4. And so to access any, so you basically use the like NBSP, no break space. What you do, so you put ampersand NBSP and semicolon. So they have declared all these entities, and you can access that value, and they'll just replace whatever the text inside with this thing. If we let's go back to our PPT. So that was the general entity. It's like creating a variable once and then accessing that variable, creating a variable in the DTD. So where we have all the under inside the doc type, starting from a square bracket, start square bracket, end square bracket, we have the DTD. Here we put more information about our entities, general entities. It's like a text that we can refer in our XML document. Okay. Now, for example, let's talk about the DTD for one moment again. Now here we have a DTD in which I have an element, sports car, truck, minivan, sedan, hatchback. All of them are four-wheeler type as well. Truck can have more. Anyways, so they have some kind of specs, right? So like model, fuel type, engine, age, emission, brand. So in my entity, as you can see, these like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 values is kind of repeated for all these 5 elements that I have. So don't repeat yourself. It's just a text side. I think the idea comes from the pragmatic programmers that don't repeat yourself, because once you change anything, you have to change everywhere. So the same concept here. Same idea, I would say. Same idea is that we're using here. That let's say if you have to change anything in the specs, and let's say you have to add another element, another child element for all these vehicles. What will happen is that you have to change and you have to edit all the elements. So what if we can give you a way for example, we give you a way that you can declare once and then you can refer to it again and again. Now you say that we have general entity for that. We have general entity, but general entity is only used for to refer something to something like a text that is in XML, not in DTD. So to create a structure of DTD, to let's say to refer to something, we cannot use general entity. So now what we can do about it? So there is a concept called a parameter entities. Parameter entity is this idea for DTD. So you can, if let's say if you have a repeated text, you can create a parameter entity and put all that values for that entity, and then you can refer to that entity. The only thing change here, once you're declaring it, so general entity, you just declare entity, the name of entity, and then the value, the text that it contains. But here you also add another %, space, then name of entity, space, then the text that it contains. To further access that parameter entity, what you need to do is, it's similar to general entity. The only thing changes is that to access the general entity, you used ampersand, the name of entity, and semicolon. To access the parameter entity, you need to use percentage, the name of the parameter entity, and the semicolon. So okay, so one of the example that I have picked from the HTML4 DTD, that they create, and it's interesting because a lot of event, if you see, they are similar for lots of elements. So we have in HTML, we have lots of element: paragraph, UL, OL, option, HTML, head, TH. We have lots of elements, right? So lots of these, there are events, set of events which basically repeated for a lot of other elements. So 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 what we can do is, and these actually also, I haven't like talked about attribute, but like I said, that you can also create an attribute list as well. So here, like they have created, uh, first of all, entity, which is a name, like event, and then the value of that, all the value that it contains: on click, on db click, on mouse, and all the events. And then it says, and then also it create element, which is the name of span, and then they create an attribute list of span which contains this entity list. So whenever they need this attribute list, because obviously all these events are kind of attributes, right? So, and to create an attribute, you need to declare exclamatory attribute list, name of the element for which we have all the attributes. So what they have done is, whenever they need this set of event, they just refer to it as in percentage, the name of event, and a semicolon. So that's the one way of doing. Another example I have picked from the XML in the nutshell. It's a good book that you can read. Third chapter, it has all about DTDs if you want further in-depth discussion. So they have like they have, so one of the example that I took, that okay, apartment, sublet, coupe, condo, and house, they all share some element. So for that, what they did is they create entities, which is residential content contains address, footage, room, baths, and then we have rental content, purchase content, rent and price. So the same way they have they, whatever the elements, they, for example, first two has rent, and the four elements comes from the residential content. So they access those with the percentage residential underscore content, semicolon, comma, and the, for the rental, they have declared another entity which says rental content and has a value of rent. So okay, so again, so the concept that we have followed in the DTD, like we create a DTD and then we can access the DTD with the using of keyword system, like exclamatory, doc type, uh, the root of element, which is order, and then we have system keyword in caps, and then we have the URL to the DTD. So it could contain HTTP, any request on on any resource that we have on a web, also of file system as well. So so here again the same concept is for the entities as well. Let's say if entities, for example, in HTML, as you have seen, right, we have lots of entities, like lots of entities. So to declare all those entities, what we can do is we can create an external file, and then we can refer to that external file in our example. So that's what the next PPT says, that for example, I'm taking example of general, but you can also do with the parameter as well. On the left side, you can see I have created entity name company, and it has the value which says School of Software Engineering. But if you put this value somewhere else, let's say some HTTP, then you can access this entity company system and the URL. Also, if you put in some kind of file, then you can put entity company system and then the path to the specific file. But then later on you can access company, ampersand company, semicolon, slash company. Okay, so that's it with the DTDs and entities. I have a quiz that I will share in the link. Next video we'll be talking about how you can exploit this. Thank you for watching. Come on.